For more on this and the economy, I'm joined by Bessma Momani. She's a senior fellow at the Center for International Governance and Innovation. She's also a professor at the University of Waterloo's School of International Affairs. Welcome to BizAsia America and welcome to the show. You may not be able to answer all of these questions, but I'm going to ask them anyways. Let me talk about the dam itself that Sean was showing us just now. Is it safe now, and has there been any damage from the last few months?
None that we know of, but I think one of the things that this dam is most susceptible to, not only the reality of it needing constant maintenance, but the truth is you do need the expertise. And just like much of the sort of technical core of Iraq, many of them are not reporting to work under ISIS or under IS. And so what you have really here are the technocrats or the scientists who need to be there, to be on the ground, to maintain, to observe, to, in fact, issue the warning bells, are not going to be there. They're not wanting to be employed by the Islamic State. So this is really a challenge, and I think that as the report pointed out, we're looking at the flooding of potentially major cities in Iraq.
All right, I mean, is that the worst case scenario? Is there any other significance besides the fact that it possibly could flood specific areas? I mean, could they blow it up? What's the worst case scenario?
Well, I mean, the worst case definitely is this flooding, but let's not forget that the Mosul Dam also provides the most amount of water for the rest of the country. The amount of drinking water that comes from Mosul Dam is quite high. So, one of the things that has been raised as a potential fear is that there is some, playing with the water supply to basically not provide clean water for the rest of the country. And obviously where you can look downstream to Crete and past that, including Baghdad, where many of the so-called enemies of IS reside. Unfortunately, this is a very important tool or weapon that could be used by these militia.
All right, given the back and forth of who controls the dam, right now the Iraqi government controls the dam with its folks up north. Who's ultimately responsible for this dam?
Well, I mean, in the Constitution, it would suppose that it would be under the central Iraqi government's authority. But I think one of the things that we've seen, not just as a rise of IS, but more importantly, just the overall, regional situation has propelled the Kurdish authorities to really lay claim to having and creating their own state. So, one of the things that's going to be of great importance is whether or not Kurdistan will be vying for this important resource after the fall of IS, or when IS is pushed out by the Peshmerga, as they've done, for example, in Tikrit. So this is really, I think, a hot spot. And obviously, as long as no one controls this, no one's going to pay the bills, so to speak, of maintaining it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole nother issue. Let me take a step back and talk about the region as a whole. I mean, this conflict specifically in Iraq, it's also impacting its neighbors as well. Walk us through a bit how it's impacting them.
Well, I mean, it's devastating all around. Obviously, for much of the region, Iraq included, not having sort of the confidence of a stable market means you don't have productivity, you don't have opening up of factories, you don't have work. And so people are really paying a heavy toll and price for this. On another front, the Kurds, which have, as I said, been building sort of the case for their own autonomy, have been doing relatively well. I mean, it was a success story. Foreign investors were rushing to Erbil, the self-proclaimed capital of Kurdistan, and that really was a really important source of wealth. Much of that included Turkish investment, ironically. Even though the Kurds and the Turks have had long-standing feuds, the Turks have been big investors in Kurdistan. So that's really, I think, a lay of the land. Of course, this fight between the Sunnis and the Shia of Iraq is really, I think, putting a toll on the domestic economy. Oil supplies are not nearly as good as they were, even compared to 10, 15 years ago. So we still haven't gotten full Iraqi oil supply back on the market. And what is making it to the market is, in some cases disputed, whether we're talking about the Kurds taking oil from Tikrit, but more importantly now, increasingly, the fight between the Sunnis and the Shias.
Bessma, I have time for one more question. I want to ask you about something you just mentioned, which is Erbil. And we showed some pictures just now of all the construction cranes and all the development that's been happening there in the last few years. I guess the question is, how far of a setback is this to the recovery and the economic development of that particular region? Are we 5 years back? Are we 10 years back? Or is it incalculable?
Well, I'm not that worried because I do think that there's a lot of regional investors, particularly Turkish investors, and the Turkish-Kurdish relations are improving. So that's a good sign. That will only build and grow. The key thing will be, will the world, and particularly the Western community, let go of this fantasy of having Iraq keep together and allow the Kurds to have their own state? If that happens, as I expect it will, I think Kurdistan will flourish.
Bessma Momani, thank you for your thoughts.
Thank you.